Oh, hello there. I didn't see you at first. Welcome. You are now with Jocelyn, and you have tuned into my new series called How to Be a More Aware Person. That's a good cup of joe. That is a good cup of joe. Now, before we get started, I do want to say thank you for tuning in, and if you feel inspired at any point of this video, please feel free to start a conversation with me in the comment section below. Like this video if you enjoy it, and please make sure to fully support my channel and my growing community by subscribing to, well, my channel. You can do so by clicking on that little sunflower down there. Yeah, that little sunflower you see in the bottom left corner. Wait, bottom left? Bottom right. Your bottom right. Yeah, bottom right corner. Yeah, do that. Click it. Click subscribe. And we're good to go. Now, I am so excited to start this series because I feel like it's not only going to give me the opportunity to conduct my own research for these videos, but also be able to share my own tidbits and nuggets and gems of awareness that I've learned throughout my lifetime so far. And in this video, I want to talk about unsolicited advice. I think it's something so important that all of us become more aware of, both from the receiving end and the giving end, because I'm sure that we've all been there where we catch ourselves giving somebody unsolicited advice. Now, let's start with what is unsolicited advice. You may have heard this term before, but you may or may not know exactly what it is. So let's break it down. Unsolicited, I think, is the main word that we're going to look at here. Unsolicited means nobody asked for it. So yeah, we're going to leave it at that. So when you give unsolicited advice, you are giving advice that the person you're giving it to didn't necessarily ask for it. Though you may think that they were asking for advice, though you may think that you're being very helpful, though you may be giving this advice out of pure good intention, unsolicited advice is and can be hurtful, detrimental to some of your relationships. And there's just better ways to approach giving advice than when you're not asked for it. Let's look at the various motives behind why people give or feel called to give unsolicited advice. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not intentional, sometimes, most of the time actually, it's habitual, it's subconscious. There's more underlying meanings behind why somebody is giving you unsolicited advice. So let's look at some various motives behind unsolicited advice. First, let's take a look at some of the more innocent motives behind some of the unsolicited advice that is given in this world. Often, people offer advice simply because they feel like what they have to say can help you, can make your life easier, can improve your life, or reduce your stress, your sadness, your confusion, whatever the case may be. Their motives are simply to help you and make your life easier. Another innocent motive is sometimes offered by a stranger to start a conversation, or offered by a friend who feels like them giving you advice may bring you guys closer together and forge a connection. Friends often feel like they can be a problem solver for you, so they have good intentions. Other times, unsolicited advice may come from someone who just made a really exciting discovery in their life. They just made a mistake and learned a lesson, and they want to pass on this lesson to other people. They're excited to share it with the world, and they feel like your situation is perfect for this piece of advice that they want to give you. Let's look at some less innocent reasons why some people may be giving you unsolicited advice. Sometimes people feel helpless. They feel like they don't really know how to respond to what you are telling them, so they feel like they should just give advice, even though you just wanted a listening ear and you weren't necessarily looking for validation or advice. This person doesn't really know how to respond. They feel helpless. So the solution to this helplessness that they're feeling is giving you advice. Sometimes people who give unsolicited advice feel the need to be needed. They feel good in giving advice. They feel valued and important and powerful and validated when they have advice to give. These people, again, feel the need to be needed, and most of the time these people are habitual, unsolicited advice givers. Other times, some people who give unsolicited advice feel this subconscious need to be in the role of the teacher, not just in your life or in some moments, but in a lot of people's lives around them. And they are people with the tendency to feel the need to take on the role of the teacher, typically like to give unsolicited advice all the time, because again, they feel like them giving advice is like them kind of being a teacher to the person that they're giving advice to. All these types of advice that are less innocent and kind of have more different motives than the first ones that I was talking about, it's still helpful advice, and they still don't necessarily have bad intention. Being on the receiving end, being aware of the reasons why some people are giving unsolicited advice can give you more of an understanding of the other person, which will help you kind of respond to the situation in a more healthy and helpful way. Because sometimes, and I'll get into it, with people who give unsolicited advice, you may make the situation worse depending on how you tell them. If you are listening to this and you feel triggered by any of these motives that I am explaining to you, then typically if you feel triggered by something, then that means that some of this may apply to you. So definitely look inward and kind of analyze yourself as we continue this conversation. Now, let's get into some of the not so good motives behind unsolicited advice. These types of motives behind unsolicited advice is definitely a kind of heavier energy that you can feel when you are receiving it, and some of these are advice givers who like to take on the role of being the more knowledgeable person in the room. They like to establish their dominance. They like to give advice that puts them in the position of being someone above you, of being someone who knows more, of being someone who, again, has some kind of subconscious need to be dominant. Another motive is honestly, they are giving you unsolicited advice because they want to change something about you that they don't like. They see something in you that they do not like and do not want to see anymore. So they are giving you pieces of advice that you didn't ask for so you can change. Most of the time when you are receiving this kind of unsolicited advice, it may feel like an insult. If this is ongoing advice that you're receiving, it can definitely, receiving or giving, it can definitely be detrimental to your relationship. Other times, people honestly just want to create drama. Some people enjoy conflict. Yes, you heard that right. Some people just like drama. They love just hearing themselves and hearing others argue. They are giving this unsolicited advice, consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally, and they typically give lots of advice all the time as a way to cause debate and drama. Now, these kinds of motives that I just brought up definitely has more to do with the person giving you the unsolicited advice than it has to do with you. Whatever they tell you is definitely something that you should not take personally. With any of the motives that I explained, you definitely do not want to take any of it personally if the unsolicited advice that you're receiving is not making you feel good in any kind of way. Again, a lot of us have at some point in our lives given advice that was not asked for, and most of the time that's because somebody has come to us with a dilemma in their life, and we automatically assume that they are seeking advice from us, when in fact this is not always the case. Sometimes people just want a listening ear from somebody that they feel comfortable with, somebody that they feel supports them, somebody that knows them. So definitely keep that in mind whenever somebody comes to you and you feel compelled to give advice. Perhaps just listen. Remember that listening is most of the time more of a problem solver and more therapeutic than giving unsolicited advice. So keep that in mind, write it down, keep it in mind. Listening ear greater than unsolicited advice. Let's get into why unsolicited advice is and can be problematic. The main reason why it can be and it is problematic is simply because you are giving advice to somebody that didn't ask for it. So it can come off as criticism. The person that is receiving your unsolicited advice, that is receiving advice that they were not looking for, they can feel like they are being criticized. It can cause people to feel stressed. It can cause them to feel more anxious. It can cause them to feel overwhelmed. Sometimes it can cause people to start second guessing themselves. Unsolicited advice typically doesn't end up being received how you want it to be received if you are someone who is giving advice with good intention, with the intention of simply helping out. So if you are somebody who has the tendency to give unsolicited advice, let's keep some 3 things in mind. 1, if you do it, don't be hard on yourself. The fact that you have recognized it and you have the awareness that you do it is step 1 to, well, not doing it anymore. And that is great. That gives you the opportunity to work on yourself and definitely reflect on your intentions. Why are you somebody that tends to give unsolicited advice? Is it just out of habit? Is it just out of you not recognizing that sometimes the other person simply wants you to listen. So 2, keep that in mind. Sometimes someone just wants you to listen. Sometimes someone just wants you to be a listening ear, a shoulder to lean on. Recognize that most of the time in these cases, attentive listening is so much better than jumping to giving someone advice that they didn't necessarily ask for, even though you feel like they are asking for it. And 3, if you really feel called to give somebody your piece of advice, to give someone your perspective, simply ask them. Ask them before you offer them your piece of advice. Ask them, hey, can I share a piece of my advice with you? Can I give you advice? Would you like me to give you some advice? There's so many different ways that you can phrase the question, but definitely asking before giving when it's unsolicited, again, is so much better and makes you so much more of an aware person doing that. And that is something that I've started becoming way more conscious of when people are turning to me to tell me some of the issues or dilemmas that they're experiencing, asking them at the end of everything that they have to say, can I give you a piece of advice? Now, if you are somebody that is receiving unsolicited advice and you are sick of it, you do not want to be receiving unsolicited advice anymore, but you don't necessarily know how to tell the other person, stop, I did not ask for this. Here are some things to be aware of and some things that you can do to alleviate the unsolicited advice that you are experiencing. Believe it or not, I know that you are the one that is experiencing something that you didn't ask for, and you feel like maybe perhaps the other person should be more aware and conscious of their own boundaries. But if you take a look at all the motives that I explained earlier in this video, you will realize that all these kinds of people with various motives on giving unsolicited advice are people who you want to respond with compassion. In whatever way you choose to respond to the person giving you unsolicited advice, you want to do so in a compassionate way. Again, if you take a look back at all the different motives that I explained earlier in this video, all those people deserve compassion from you, especially if you are going to be upfront and honest and tell them that, you know what, I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate you trying to help me. I appreciate you sharing your advice and take on this situation, but advice is not something that I was seeking. I genuinely just wanted a listening ear, or however you choose to word that, but definitely try to be compassionate. Identifying the motive definitely helps you come up with a more appropriate response depending on the person. So identify the motive, take action according to that motive. Even though it may be hard, always respond with compassion, respond politely. If you can, just hear them out. If it's super consistent, establish a boundary, again with compassion and politeness. And gratitude. Sometimes people just want that gratification. Definitely if they are kind of on that power tip of where they are in a sense kind of seeking validation, they like to take on the role of the teacher. At the end of the day, if you just let them know, you hear them out, you appreciate them trying to help, and leave it at that, it definitely helps diffuse the situation in a very light way without the potential of detrimenting your relationship. Whew, all right. And there we have it. That is all I have to say. That is my take that is some of my research and my own experience and awareness on unsolicited advice. I think the main takeaways here are identifying the motive behind the unsolicited advice that you're giving or receiving is so helpful and definitely makes you a more aware person. If you are someone who really wants to give somebody advice but they didn't ask for it, simply ask. Simply tell the person, ask the person, hey, can I share my thoughts? Do you mind if I give you a piece of advice? Would you like me to give you my take on this situation? That is definitely the approach that you want to take instead of just giving someone advice that they didn't ask for. Being aware that sometimes people who are sharing their dilemmas or their hardships or situation in which you may think that they are wanting advice from you actually sometimes just want a listening ear. So I think those are the biggest takeaways about understanding unsolicited advice. And here we are. Now we're more aware, a little bit more aware than we were at the beginning of this video, and I hope you appreciated it. If you have any themes that you would like me to delve into for the next videos of this How to Be a More Aware Person series, please let me know. I would be so excited to see what you guys would like to hear more of. Anyways, if you don't tell me, I have plenty to tell you that I am excited to film and share. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you feel inspired to start a conversation, leave a comment below, and definitely would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. Now, look at us being a little more aware in this world. I think this calls for a hug. Come here. Come on. Come on. Don't be shy. Let's go. Come on. Okay. Yep. We're doing it. We're doing it. Yep. Well, okay. There we go. There we go. Okay. Good job. Good job, everybody. Good job. Cut.